You had a picture of
Oh,
grains. What
it
are
was
those?
it was amaranth.
Very cool. Very cool. Is that something that you cook with often?
I actually just started. I used to have oatmeal, like diehard oatmeal fan, and I've been going through, as you know, my own SIBO protocol. And
Yes.
so one of the things was to try and reduce grains because they can actually mimic gluten protein, even if they don't have gluten in them.
Okay.
So I use amaranth because high protein, high calcium, high iron, high magnesium, and they're just better for the digestion. They can be easier on the gut. So when you're repairing your gut, healing
Yep.
gut health, those are a great alternative to use to something like oats or quinoa or whatever.
Gut health is the like primary healthcare issue after like health autonomy nowadays. We've got
Yes.
to fix our microbiome and our immune system. So many people don't realize that you truly are what you eat.
Yep.
And if you continue to eat inflammatory foods and junk foods and even seems like healthy food sometimes can be negative for your body, with nightshades and those kind of things. And so um at some point, hopefully over the next few months, I'd love to talk to you about SIBO and
Mm.
and digestive health.
Yeah, 100%. It's like my number one favorite thing to talk about
Yeah.
because it really is the seed of our health if our digestion isn't working properly. And I have a background in fitness and nutrition. So
Gotcha.
I'm equally as excited to talk about if we're not digesting the nutrients that we're giving ourselves, then it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how healthy a food we're eating. If we don't digest those nutrients properly, then our body's not going to function properly.
How long has this health journey been for you? From like I had a wake up call. I got sick. I was diagnosed with autoimmune condition called Meniere's disease, which is
Mm-hmm.
vertigo and ear ringing, and it was horrifying. And
Yeah.
I spent a year in vertigo, and finally I'm 10 years later I'm healed. I'm free from it, but it was a huge burden, and so it started me on a journey of detoxification and reading labels and realizing that, man, the people that are protecting us, it doesn't look like they're protecting us so much. And
Mm-hmm.
so what was your start of your journey?
I think with SIBO, there's so many underlying factors. It's very complex, and it can be as complex as going through trauma, which I experienced from a very young age, multiple times. Lots of stress, poor diet, lots of sugar, alcohol. I don't drink alcohol, um, but like I didn't grow up the healthiest, right? I grew up on processed food and
Yeah.
whatnot. But I've probably had SIBO for at least 12 years, and the doctors just diagnosed me with IBS. And we know that at least 84% of people with IBS actually have SIBO. And that's when there's bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine, which is normally a very sterile environment, but bacteria gets into there and causes a host of issues. So, all of the classic IBS symptoms, but also mood issues as well, like depression, anxiety, all of these different things that the doctors basically just say it's in your head when it's
Yeah.
actually in your gut and in your
It's in your gut.
microbiome.
Yeah. And so at our clinic, we call that your second brain. Your brain, you two brains talk to each other. And so your brain tells your guts what to do, what it needs. And
Mm-hmm.
or your brain tells your guts, and your guts send serotonin and dopamine and all kinds of
Yes.
neurotransmitters back to the brain through the bloodstream. So yeah, digestive health is big. When I first started following you, and just I'm just you're just a really mellow tone, and like you have just such a great presence about you, and that you're really like calming, and I'm sure that's like part of your healing process too, and dealing with that. And so initially that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, but over the last few weeks, and I wrote this down, that the healthcare political climate, the healthcare climate
Mm.
has seems to have changed drastically over the last few weeks. And I don't know your experience, but I think a lot of Americans, and especially where I'm from, we don't get anything but the mainstream media from you guys.
Yeah.
And what I see on different websites that are not mainstream media is way different than what I'm seeing today. So I was just wondering if maybe you could share like your experience over the last year, 6 months, the last few months with the sea illness.
Yeah.
And just kind of how you deal with the pressure.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going into our third lockdown in Alberta. It's starting on Monday. I don't know why, like, I guess the weekend's fine, right? Like,
Yeah.
we don't really know. The
Go
rules
ahead and have
are,
fun. Yeah, go ahead and have fun for the weekend.
yeah. So, like, all the hairdressers have to close up shop, tattoo artists, no more patio dining for restaurants. I mean, you couldn't even dine in as it is. Now they're taking away patio. So, all the small businesses are shut down, and yet the things like Costco and Walmart and all of these businesses absolutely can stay open, which makes no sense, right?
No, it's really hurting the local people and the local businesses. It's sad.
Yeah.
Had you guys been under that kind of lockdown before, or is
Yeah.
this the most restrictive yet?
No, this is the third time going into this. Yeah.
It's,
So you're like, if
it's
it worked the first time, why are we?
yeah, right. And so I mean, there's a lot of I've seen marches, and I've seen a lot of people trying to get out. I've also seen people getting like beat up by the police and pretty wicked looking stuff. It's authoritarianism at its core. It's totalitarianism at its core. When we talk about autonomy and we talk about our healthcare, for so long that we heard this word pro-choice. So we heard that, you have an option to do this or do that. But when it comes to this,
no option.
There's no option.
Yeah. You do have an option, but your life is going to be drastically reduced if you don't take that option.
Yes. And living by coercion is very scary. It's very scary.
What's really interesting is there has been a lot of protests that have large numbers of people, freedom protests, and you don't hear a breath of it on the news. Isn't that interesting?
Even there.
Yep. There was a huge one in Princess Island Park, massive, like well over 1,000 people. Yeah. And it wasn't on the news anywhere.
That's fascinating. And did they break it up? Did they come in? And the people that are watching this or you're listening to the podcast, you've got to understand the situation that they're in, the situation that we're in. There's a level of gaslighting that's happening as well. And so that's gaslighting, I think, is that, hey, you're free. No, you're not. Hey, you're free. No, you're not.
And just small businesses, like, where it doesn't even garner that kind of response. I mean, they're just having blanket policies for everyone instead of looking at each business on an individual level and thinking like, this business is small. Does it really need to be shut down? Yeah. We still don't know where all of the spread is happening. We need more transparency with governments, and we need to know where all of these numbers are coming from. Shutting down all these gyms when hardly anyone goes to them in the first place doesn't make sense. Like, where are the numbers coming from? These are the answers that we want. We're not getting them.
What is the testing situation like? Are they offering the free testing and?
Oh yeah. So testing, I don't think you can just go and randomly get tested anymore unless there's a cause, but vaccination programs have fully rolled out. I believe it was yesterday or the day before. 30 years and up can go and get their first dose of the vaccine. And by the 10th, what day is it today? 12-year-olds and up can go and get their first dose of the vaccine. So you have like lots of, people putting their shots and jabs and whatever else on social media. And you just think like, wow, I have some numbers prepared for you, for everyone listening in other countries or in America. There's been 24,489 deaths from COVID ever in Canada. So just under 25,000 deaths.
What's the total population of Canada? Do you know?
37.59 million.
Got you.
Yeah. So out of those deaths, 44 of them, that's 0.2%, were 20 to 29 years old. 98 deaths.
44 total? Hold on, 44 total deaths.
44 total deaths between 20 and 29 years old.
Out of 25,000.
Out of 25,000. That's 0.2%.
Okay.
Between the ages of 30 and 39, there was 98 deaths. That's 0.4%. So between 20 and 40, there was a total of 142 deaths, which is 0.6% I won't go into all the other numbers, but
Sure.
just so you know, between 70 to 79, there was 19.7% of deaths, and 80 plus, there was
Yeah.
67.4%. That's a total of
That's it.
16,195. So when you're looking at all of these deaths, the average age of the person in Alberta is 81 years old who's dying.
Wow. That's a big number.
That's a big number. So
It is.
87% of the deaths in Canada were 70 years and older. So when you have, Premier Doug Ford, Premier Jason Kenney stand up there and say young people are dying often or young people are dying every single day, that's actually a lie. I mean, these are government run websites that you can go on and look for yourself. Young
Yeah.
people are not dying every single day. And
Yeah.
then on top of that, when you look at comorbidities, when there's
Mhm.
3 or more, that's the majority of the population that's dying. 85% of the people that died with COVID had hypertension.
Whoa, that's a big number. That's a very specific stat that they're keeping up there.
Yeah.
Obesity is in that top three as well, right? I mean, I'm assuming is in America it's
No.
obesity, heart disease, and then something else.
Hypertension, cardiovascular disease, renal disease, dementia, diabetes,
There you go.
respiratory diseases, cancer, stroke, liver diseases, and immunodeficiency diseases.
It, it, in the States, it's estimated that the majority of people, that like 70% of the people that have died, not that their life is less in 6 months, but
Yep.
they would have died within 6 months anyways from whatever comorbidity that they had. So if they had heart disease and they got COVID and they died, the estimate is that they were probably going to die within the next 6 months of the heart disease anyways.
Yeah, and like I think I heard this statement and it was put really well. The lifestyle disease loaded the gun, but COVID pulled the trigger. And
Yeah.
so when you have governments and health authorities stand up and put fear into the population, especially for people who are not vulnerable to this
Yeah.
disease, it's a lie and it's completely uncalled for. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to push their narrative and they're trying to push their vaccination program because they've spent billions of dollars, right? Like, how do you back
Yes.
out of something when you've invested so much money? How do you say
True.
like, oh, we overshot this one? It's like you've ruined people's lives, right?
They've way overshot it, and then on the other side is the adverse event reaction site is just blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
I have personally seen a couple of in my own clinic of
Mm-hmm.
reactions,
Mm-hmm.
and they're pretty horrifying, and the people that are going through them are horrifying. They're seeing they have these like flashes of like darkness that almost like they're going to pass out, and then they wake up. They're it's like the insides of their bodies are burning. It's really sad, and that only gets reported like 10% of the time. There's been over I think 4,400 deaths so far reported to VAERS.
Yeah.
Reported, and that's a big problem. Do you guys report to VAERS as well, or do you have something different?
I don't know offhand. I think VAERS is just American because it's a part of the CDC.
Yeah.
I'm not completely certain. And look, like I think the thing to understand is everyone going to have an adverse reaction to the vaccine? No, right? Like we're not saying that, but there's
Right.
always a risk that's
Yes.
involved with any kind of vaccine, whether it be small or big. We don't know the long-term effects, especially of techniques such as the mRNA one. We don't know long-term effects. And like, again, it comes down to personal choice. And people have come at me and said, no one's forcing anyone to do anything. But when you're making a group of people who are choosing not to do something feel bad,
Mhm.
then what do you call that? That's kind of like a forced kind of coercion. And when we look at informed consent, and informed consent is something very important to the medical industry, to psychologists. I mean, in school, it was, ground into us, this process of informed consent, because in the past, there's been some highly unethical things done without the
Yes.
consent of participants. And we are in one big experiment.
Yes, I think that the majority of people don't know that up till about 10 years ago, it was necessary for them to test a drug or one of these jabs for 10 years. It took
Mm,
10 years of trials
mm,
and over, and a lot of these drugs didn't make it out. And when they made it out, they still were recalled after 10 years of testing.
yeah.
And yeah, this is a big, huge experiment here in our town. If you are a child that's in a class currently, if you're a child that is in a classroom and you're exposed and you get quarantined, they do the 7 to 10 days. What they're saying though is that if you go ahead with the cure, then when that happens, then the ones that have received the cure, they don't have to leave, they don't have to be quarantined. The ones that have not received the cure will be quarantined, but they will not, their education will not no longer be provided at home. So they're recommending that we do state funded virtual schooling or the regular school that the children go to. This year what they've done is they had a choice. You could stay at home, or you could go to regular school with a mask on and social distance, and the burden that all this is.
Yeah.
But now there's no option. And
Mm,
so if you are exposed next year, you miss 5 days of school with no education. This is another problem that I have with it, is that there are a lot of kids that are struggling and suffering
mm,
mentally.
mm.
It's not about the sickness for these children. I think this is important to understand, because even your stats say it, my stats say it. This is not a childhood illness.
No.
This is not a sickness that kills young people. What it's doing though, it's causing young children to be fearful of people. They're not recognizing smiles. They don't recognize frowns. This is how a child up to the age of 14 recognizes empathy, recognizes
Mm,
compassion, by being able to see this mouth. And if we can't show the smile, they don't recognize eye smiles. They just don't. And so
no.
it's really horrifying as far as that goes. And so hopefully we'll keep on doing these. You'll keep on reaching out to people.
Mm.
I'll keep on reaching out to people and have a voice heard, because the voice, there's not one for us. We're making one for ourselves.
That's right. Yeah. And, just as a stat, between the ages of 0 to 19 years old, there's been 9 deaths in all of Canada. So, like, we need to put things into perspective and take a step back. The mainstream media, this is one of the most helpful pieces of advice I can give you. The mainstream media is a business, and that business relies on viewers, it relies on clicks, it relies on us to keep coming back to it. And the
Right.
psychology they use is very basic, right? They tap into our fear response by continuously putting out like fears of second wave or disaster, right? Like, we're oriented towards danger because that's how we're wired. So
Yeah.
when we're constantly seeing that danger, they also rely on the recency effect, which is constantly
Yeah.
putting out these numbers. So that's all we remember. We remember what we last saw the best.
That's
So
right.
they're tapping into that fear response. They're using very basic psychology to keep us returning. I mean, bad news sells. You're not
Yep.
going to go click on something wonderful and heartwarming. You're going to go click on like this many deaths or Bill and Melinda Gates got divorced, right? Like,
That's right. Like who cares there?
who cares?
Yeah, big deal. So I think you're making a good point, that our heads are constantly filled with that stuff. So when we choose our information,
Mm-hmm.
it is totally okay to go off the grid. It's totally okay to go off the mainstream. I don't really use Google to search. There's a Russian search engine that is like backdoored, and that's the one that I use. And when I look stuff up on there, the results are way different,
Yeah.
way different. And the websites that I find that are censored here, they're open in other countries. And so we think that and I never thought, like, growing up. So we're country folk here.
We
And
are.
and so growing up as a country boy in East Tennessee, I don't know much about I certainly didn't know much about the world. Even today, I don't know a whole lot about Canada, even because our focus is always, Americans are, we're Americans, and so we often think of ourselves first, and so the media that you get, though, do you get American media and Canadian, and are those like
Yep.
together? So you have like the same kind of the letters, the ABC, NBC too?
CNN, Fox
Gotcha.
News. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get all of that on top of our own news media. In fact, I think a lot of Canadians probably watch American news more.
Okay.
Yeah, CNN is like playing everywhere.
Everywhere.
We call
And
it,
that's
my husband
like,
and I call it the Clinton News Network.
it is. That's good. You're correct. You're correct. What do you do to keep your mind healthy in a situation such as this?
Well, I think there's lots of different things that I do. One of the biggest things is I try and set healthy boundaries with media. I don't watch mainstream media. I might look at headlines every, other day, maybe, I don't know, maybe 5 times a week. I'll look and see if there's any headlines because I'm posting that kind of content on my Instagram. And I never thought that I would get political on my Instagram. I thought it would always just be about like health and fitness.
Yeah.
But, we need voices right now that are courageous enough to lose their reputation, to stand up for the truth. And I can't sit back and say nothing when what we're seeing going on is completely illogical. For someone to be pushing something on you and saying the vaccine gives you better antibodies than the actual virus itself is like that's wrong. First of all, like that's crazy. And I'm a woman who's deeply passionate about body autonomy. So when I see that body autonomy, when I see freedom being taken away, I can't sit back and say nothing. I also have the luxury of not having a job right now. I'm in school full time, so I have nothing to lose, right? Like whereas other people are fearful of losing their job, which is crazy because freedom of speech is gone essentially. You're getting canceled. There was an artist that put up a mural this last weekend, I think, and it was a woman, it was a face with a mask off of it, and it said let us breathe. You saw that post?
I did. I saw it. Yeah.
And it's one thing for the person who hired her to say, this went off what we had agreed on, but he made the comment, this art is dangerous. And when you start censoring the arts and people's opinions, we're truly in an Orwellian kind of time. And you have to think the fact that you're saying art is dangerous makes you dangerous.
Totally. And there's a digital, I actually got shadow banned on Twitter. I had a few thousand followers for a couple years, and then all of a sudden I noticed that where'd everybody go? And it was during that whole purge that was happening in like 2019, 2020, right before, the election here. And they were really taking a lot of people out. And so we even though like that there's all kinds of different avenues to get this information out. You just have to find one that's right for you. Instagram is supposed to be pretty and like you just like you were saying, health, fitness, and like lifestyle, and that's the goal. And then we read a news article and we go, somebody has to know this. My people have to know this. Even if it's just one person, I'm going to post this today. I think it's a good thing though to have influence. And where else do you reach these people if you're not going to reach them through your Instagram? You may not ever get a chance to touch base with them, and they may truly never have a chance. Just like I'm a Christian. I believe that you are as well, and so like if nobody ever gave me a chance to know, then I would be super super lost right now. And if nobody ever gives me a chance to know that, hey, you know what, that's wrong, what's happening right now is wrong, and I just believe that it's the right thing to do, then 20 years from now, when something else happens and it's even worse than it is today, then I might be on the side of the people that I don't want to be.
And we have to be willing to question. And that's one thing that I really believe, like, you're a part of this community. I'm a part of this community. We've interviewed different people like Dr. Ray. He's wonderful. Like, we have this like community of critical thinkers that are coming together, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And, the more ridiculous this narrative becomes, the more people are going to look to communities that have people like us for information. And so, we do have a bigger chip on our shoulders now as well to keep putting out that thoughtful information, encouraging people to be critical thinkers, turning off mainstream media, and like use your brain. When I say between 20 and 29 years of age, there's been 44 deaths. And then you read a news article saying that young people are dying often. Well, A, what do you classify as young? And B, that's a lie if it's like, right? Like, use your brain. Unfortunately, we're in a situation, and we've been in this situation for over a year, where we're not able to use our brain properly because we're under chronic stress. So when we're under chronic stress, we're not accessing the front part of our brain that's involved in critical thinking and decision making. We're accessing that really reptilian, primal, the limbic system. And not only that, is we're having all of these stress hormones at this chronic low level because we're uncertain, there's conflict, we have a lack of information, we have a lack of control, we have emotional needs that are going unsatisfied. So all of these things contribute to this stress response, whether that stress is real or imagined. We're in this stress response and we're not able to think clearly. So when you ask what are some of the things I do to keep a calm mind, turn off mainstream media, and then practice some relaxation techniques. For me, it's because I'm a Christian, I spend time praying and breathing. And the thing is, you can think of praying and meditating as the same thing. Like, I pray because that's what I believe in. But I've also focused that prayer time to being thankful. And gratitude goes a long way, because when we're focused on all the things that are going wrong, whether it's out there, whether it's with our body, with our health, then that becomes the most salient to us. That becomes the most evident to us. But when we're in a state of gratitude, then we tap into that relaxation response, that parasympathetic response, which is like a brake pedal. It puts the brake on, it stops that stress response, and we're able to think clearly.
What you're talking about right now, I really believe is the future of healthcare. Is and it's mindfulness is a word, is like a buzzword that even the other side is using. Self-awareness. We use the word self-care. I think that even from a being a Christian, we hear a word like meditation, but be still is a very holy thing to do. I mean, that be still and know that I'm God. Like, that's a blessing every single day, and that's also where gratefulness comes in, because the chaos that's all around us, but we can settle down and go, you know what, is that we, like, Jesus wins and we win, and it's going to get crazy. It gets crazier. If the book is true, then the back of the book's really crazy, right? But even if you're not a Christian, having the ability to settle your soul, settle, this inner you, understand that we're all sharing the same energy. We're all on the same vibrational level. That's not a new agey thing. It's just a real, it's like real. That's so real. And what we'll see over the next 10, 20 years is, from the mind brokenness that we're going to suffer from the last couple of years, and probably even the next couple of years, is that we're going to reach out to people that meditate. We're going to reach out to these natural healers. We're going to lose this faith in the medicine and start to have more faith in the power that's inside of us that animates this living world that we're living in. You know, we carry the emotions of generations of people in our brains and on our shoulders, and we have to recognize those things. We can't continue to take the next generation down to inherit the stuff that we're dealing with. And so we can start to break free from some of this bondage that we're going through, but we have to quieten ourselves. We have to get that sympathetic nervous system calmed down. You cannot, it's hard to poop when you're getting chased by a tiger, you know.
Yep.
Like what my body wants to do when I'm getting chased by a tiger is lungs breathing fast, digestion stops, heart is racing. And then when they cage the tiger, then my body settles down and I go back into that healing mode. And there's too many of us that are stuck in sympathetic nervous system right now.
Yeah. And you know, like, I love how you explain that, because it really shows people what goes on in your mind directly affects your physical body. Where the mind goes, the man follows. And we have to remember that the majority of what we're battling is not out there, but it's internal. And if those mechanisms, we have healing mechanisms in our body is able to heal itself. But if we don't have an environment that's conducive to unlock those mechanisms, then the body ends up breaking down and it ends up getting into a state of disease. And we see this with all different kinds of illnesses, cancer, diabetes, immune deficiencies, all of these at the base root. I truly believe, and there is evidence to support that this has all started in the mind, right?
Yes.
Like, you look at how people are raised. If they've experienced trauma, we have repressed emotion. Think about the fact that each and every one of us has cancer cells in our body, but what turns on those cancer cells is very different. It's like looking at someone who smokes. You can't say that smoking causes lung cancer, because not every single person will get lung cancer from smoking. So what turns on those genes in that particular person? And when you get down to it, there's a lot of emotional issues that unlock all of that.
You're freeing, you're going to free some people today, my friend. You do Barre?
I used to. So I used to teach barre. I was in the fitness industry for 10 years, worked as a personal trainer, nutrition coach. I taught barre. And then I decided that I really want to help people on a full spectrum kind of scale. And I need to do psychology in order to do that, because in order to understand everything, we need to understand the mind. So that's what I'm currently doing.
The reason that I bring that up is that I noticed that a lot of even females in my clinic or have trended that way over the last 3 to 5 years or so. And there must be just something super healing in that community, or just something healing in I don't know about barre. So, and you don't have to explain it necessarily. But there is something special about a community. And I think that's what it is at barre. I think there's something special about those people that, just that. It's like CrossFit community or Orange Theory or, whatever. There's like, when you get into that community, you just feel loved, and maybe it just takes some of the pressure off you, or I'm not real sure.
As a woman, we look at images of really fit, lean bodies, like shredded six packs. And you realize that in order to get a body like that, you're going to compromise your system. Women are not meant to be that percentage of body fat. It's going to have drastic effects on our hormonal system. And so when you see videos of like high intensity workouts and CrossFit and all of this kind of stuff, that's fine. But if it's inhibiting your body as a woman, it's not fine. So what barre does is it introduces more of the femininity back into working out, because it incorporates things like dance and Pilates and yoga. I'm not saying, only women do those, but there's a very feminine energy to barre, and women relate to it, because it's not about like being the biggest and the strongest and the fastest. It's about being in tune with your body and feeling feminine when you work out. And there is an attack on the feminine soul right now with with modern day feminism. And I consider myself a true feminist because I believe in equal opportunity. I do not believe in usurping males, right?
Yes.
Like I don't
Yeah.
believe in that.
Right.
So I think that that's probably one of the biggest drawing factors to Barre is it allows women to be feminine again.
I love that. I've never heard that explained like that. So really, really cool. And even though you're not necessarily in the middle of it as today, because your journey is you're in a different journey right now. Your path has kind of changed direction. But thanks for sharing that. I think there's a lot of
Mhm.
people out there that need to know that and need a place to have relationships, especially right now. Like small groups are closed down, churches
Yep.
are still closed.
Yep.
It's even if the church is not closed, you're still separated from people, and that's a part of the system that this was designed this way.
Mm-hmm.
It was designed to separate us. It was designed to start to take some of our humanity. It dehumanizes us when we are not around people. When I'm a touchy feely guy, that's my love language. And so when not only does it rob somebody to not receive a hug, but it robs me from not being able to give a hug because that's a gift from me. That's
Mm-hmm.
like one of those God just gives us all a talent, and gives us like certain parts of, and that's what makes the body. And so for me, being a chiropractor, being a touchy feely guy, patting somebody on the back, giving a good firm handshake,
Mm-hmm.
slugging somebody on the arm, that's healing for not just me, but for that person.
Mm-hmm.
And we've lost that.
Yeah,
And
I still
so,
hug people. I'm
yeah,
like full force, not
yeah, I am
not
too.
having it.
I'm too.
Unless they're uncomfortable, right? And you can tell like the people who you go up to them, they're like, "Whoa."
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
okay.
So no, I'm definitely not afraid to hug, but it's like those encounters in the grocery store or this thing. It's the, just being the normal human reaction
Yeah.
that happened pre 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna bring that back.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna bring that back, and we're gonna help people to understand that it's okay to hug.
Yep.
It's okay to touch. It's okay to be with your grandma. Yeah, we'll continue to encourage people that it's okay to act normal again and to be normal again. And
Mm-hmm.
if we don't, then they'll continue to take it away from us,
Yeah,
and
and,
we'll be
and and we're living in a state of incongruence, right? With what our humanity requires of us and what we're actually doing. And when
yep,
we live in that incongruence or that dissonance, we have that internal battle going on inside, which creates stress. And so we need to close that gap by either changing our thoughts or changing our behaviors. And if we change our behaviors to just accept this, I hate the term new normal. Like I refuse to accept that term. I have young nieces and nephews. It's crazy. Like it's super crazy. I have a really good quote that my 5-year-old nephew said the other day. He said, "Auntie Lena, your phone doesn't always tell the truth. Sometimes it's just people's imagination." And I was like,
that's good. Sometimes it's imaginary people
yeah.
that are posting whatever they're posting. You posted. I love to hit you with a random post that you posted. Okay.
Okay.
Um, we're held captive over our thoughts. Is that what that said? Hold on.
We're held captive by our thoughts.
We're held captive by our thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
but they are only as strong as we believe that they are.
Yeah.
What does that
And
mean?
and I put that picture of the elephant having that rope attached to its leg that was attached to a small stake in the ground, which is a very popular experiment that was done. There was this baby elephant. They put a tie around its leg, they put it to a post. It believed that it couldn't escape as it grew up. Of course, the
Yeah.
elephant could have overpowered that post, but it believed that it wasn't strong enough. And that's what's going on right now is we're believing that we're held captive by all of these things that actually don't hold power over us. But they become really strong when we believe that they do, and whether that's physically, psychologically, all of these different things. And this is where I was talking about everything starts in our mind.
Yeah.
So if we believe we're not powerful, then we won't be. If we believe we're a victim,
That's
then we
right.
will be, right?
You're
And
right.
and And when we live in that victim mentality, in that narrative, then that holds us captive.
Yeah.
Any kind of resolution seems like a dangerous option because we've identified with it. And all of these thoughts just hold us captive.
That's
And
right.
and the only way they hold us captive is if we believe that they do.
And we allow them real estate in this. The most precious real estate that you'll ever own is here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's little chunks that are, I have 4 kids, and so if I'm separating my brain and for my 4 kids, I can't allow something else to have that space, or to be able to take up that real estate. And so that I spend time focusing on this when I certainly could put my energy towards that. Some of my worst times in my entire life, I had a really good friend, and you've heard this over and over again, and the sun comes up tomorrow, and I post like that on my page, every couple weeks, just as a reminder, like, it doesn't really matter what you're going through. The sun, like, there's an opportunity for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
There's an opportunity that you can have. You don't have to even fix all the issues that you did have. We can move forward from where you stand today. The
Mm-hmm.
sun comes up tomorrow. It doesn't matter how bad it is today. You're guaranteed
Mm-hmm.
that the sun is going to come up tomorrow. And that's at bare minimum, at my lowest point, like, that gives me hope.
Mm-hmm.
That gives me hope
Mm-hmm.
that the sun's going to come up. There's a promise out there, and that I'm still breathing today.
Mm-hmm.
I can't
Mm-hmm.
believe it though. Sometimes, and I made it through that rough time. I still made it through that. And so sometimes we go back and remember those hard times, anchor to those times that we were the strongest, anchor to those good points and not the bad points, not the rough times. Don't keep on going back to the negative. Go towards the positive.
Mm-hmm. And like waking up every day and giving yourself a clean slate to work with, I think is important as well. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I struggled with a drug addiction when I was younger. And one of the scriptures that I really held on to was, I am a new creation, all old things have passed away. And so
Good.
we need to give ourselves that opportunity to have a clean slate every single day, to let everything from our past not dominate our lives, to keep moving forward and to just be that new person. Because as a Christian, I believe in a God of redemption, right? And he's redeeming us back to our true self. And that true self doesn't carry all of that hurt and trauma and pain and repression, but we can go into each and every single day with that clean slate, and that gives us hope.
You are a world changer, my friend. Lena Le Huray from What the Health Podcast, What the Health Lifestyle. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure that we'll be back on here in a few weeks or a month or two, and I would like to go a little bit deeper just on that. And next time, let's talk about some nutrition, because I know you're very passionate about that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This is super fun.
Yep, absolutely. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Bye.
Bye.